South Carolina, late 1980s, moonshine stills burned deep in the woods, and a group of runners pushed their loaded boat into Scape Swamp like they'd done countless times before. Quiet work, quick money, and home before dawn, until the swamp went silent. Footprints pressed deep into the riverbank, a pump house torn apart like rotten bark. They brushed it off as bad luck, but something had already noticed them, and the swamp wasn't about to let them pass without being seen. So before we continue, please make sure to subscribe and let us know where you're watching from. Thanks. We pushed off from the landing at the edge of Scape Swamp after sunset when the heat dropped a little and the mosquitoes rose in a thick cloud. Our boat rode low under the weight of 6 wooden crates lined with straw. Each crate held jars we had filled the night before at the shed behind Harlan's place. The smell of corn mash still stuck to my shirt. Harlan stood in the back with a hand on the motor handle, jaw set and eyes moving from bank to bank. He was older than me by 30 years and had run this route more than any of us. Wade crouched by the front with a short pole for the shallow parts and a pistol tucked behind his belt. Simeon carried the shotgun broken open across his lap, the shells in his vest pocket. Pearl sat beside me on the middle bench with the counting book pressed flat on her knee. She kept our numbers clean and never spoke more than she had to. I handled the extra gas can and kept a coil of rope under my feet. We planned to run the liquor across the flats to an old fish camp on the far side, where a buyer waited with cash. We had done it before, but never this late in the season. The channel looked like a long strip of night between the cypress trees, knees stuck up from the water in clusters, and Spanish moss hung low enough to brush our shoulders. A foxfire glow flickered on a rotting stump to the left. Frogs called in steady waves, crickets filled every gap. The air tasted like minerals and warmth. I kept my hand on the crate nearest me and felt the vibration of the small motor in the boards. We had cut the motor to idle to keep the noise down. Harlan knew every bend by memory. He lifted 2 fingers at each fork, and Wade leaned the front light to match his signal. "Keep it slow," Harlan said. "Those new Warden trucks were at the Bishopville store this afternoon. I don't see them taking the river road, but I'm not gambling the run on it." Wade grinned without much happiness in it. We could hide in any hole out here. They'd never find us unless we called to them. "We're not hiding," Pearl said. "We're delivering. Speak only when needed." Simeon clicked the shotgun closed and set it flat across his legs. "That store clerk said more than wardens. Said there were broken hoods on cars too. Said something ripped them apart. Kids talk to sell papers." Wade said, "Folks leave a truck in the sand. It sinks and twists. That's all." Harlan watched the right bank. "We're not stopping to argue over stories." Eyes out, we passed the old pump house. We take the next cut and go through until the willow stand. After that, it opens up. The old pump house sat on wooden posts with rust flaking from its sides. We slid past it, and I saw the door hanging by one hinge. A dark stain spread under the doorway and ran down a post into the water. It was old and smelled of oil. A single egret stood on one leg under the crossbeam and did not call. I had seen them fly away at any disturbance, but this one stayed still and watched us go with a fixed stare. The frogs quieted for a moment as the front wake lapped the posts. Then they started up again, but thinner, as if the sound had moved deeper into the trees. We reached a sand shelf at a bend where the channel narrowed. Harlan raised a hand and cut the motor. Wade set the light down and stepped over the side with the pole. The water reached his knees. He pushed us toward the shelf to check how deep it was, and the boat slid onto wet sand with a dull scrape. "Give it a breath," Harlan said. "We'll move the weight forward, and keep this thing from digging in." He climbed out with me, and we pushed the front a foot to the left, where the sand felt firmer. Pearl stood up to stretch her legs. "Look," she said, and pointed to the wet edge of the shelf. 3 marks pressed into the sand at even spaces. Each had 3 forward toes with thick pads at the tips. No heel. Each print was wider than my palm and sunk deep. Water had filled one of them, but not all. They ran from the scrub at the bank into the channel, then disappeared in dark water. Wade laughed too quick. "Gator dragged here, toes catch. Same as always. Gators leave a belly slide," Simeon said, voice low, "and 4 or 5 marks with claws on the side. This is 2 steps and gone. No tail, no belly." Harlan crouched and held his hand over a print without touching it. "That's a long stride," he said. "Longer than a man's. Everyone back in. We don't stand here telling the sand what it is." I looked at the bank. The scrub there was broken, Branches bent downward at shoulder height, and a section of thorn vine hung in a neat curve. Fibers stretched white where something had pulled through. I felt the urge to say it, but I kept quiet. We slid the boat free with a firm shove, and Wade hopped in last and shook water from his pant legs. The motor coughed once and caught. We moved around the bend. The next stretch ran under a roof of limbs that blocked most of the sky. The air cooled a little and smelled of damp bark. Something moved in the water to our left and left a line of ripples between the knees. It did not come up. The frogs fell away again. A single woodpecker tapped the side of a dead cypress and went still. The front light showed pollen and gnats, turning in slow circles. We came to another landing we sometimes used when the river was higher. A chain hung from a metal loop in a live oak and creaked. The ring at the end tapped the trunk. Wade swung the light up the tree. 3 gouges ran down the bark in a straight line, spaced wide and cut deep. They started higher than Harlan could reach. Sap had pulled around the cuts and hardened. Pearl sucked in a breath and let it out through her nose without a word. "Bear," Wade said, but he didn't sound sure. "No bears this close in," Harlan said. "Not since my father's time." "Keep moving." We passed the landing and took the narrow cut to the right. Here, the water ran in a shallow path lined with reeds. The motor would get tangled if we tried to push through with it. Harlan raised the propeller and put away the handle. Wade took the pole again, and I took the second. Pearl held the front light low and tight to keep it from flashing through the trees. Simeon turned his head in small movements, listening. The reeds brushed our wrists. Something had flattened a trail through them ahead of us and left a dull lane that pointed toward open water. I kept the pole steady and pushed. The bottom felt soft and springy in parts, then firm where roots knotted under the muck. The boat slid with only a faint sound. I heard a splash behind us, not close, but heavy. Then another farther off. I looked back. The channel behind us showed only small waves in the reflection of the light. I listened for frogs and heard none. I could hear my own breath and the soft rub of the pole against my palm. "Don't stop," Harlan said. "We clear the willow stand and take a rest there." We reached the willows, a tight group in a shallow pool. Their curtain of thin branches moved in a slow sway and brushed the front as we nosed in. Harlan set his hand against the trunk to hold us steady. Pearl lowered the light and clicked it off for a moment. The darkness came down as if someone had dropped a curtain. I saw nothing at all. I could hear water tapping wood somewhere out in the channel. "Light," Harlan said, and Pearl brought it back on. For a heartbeat, the beam caught 2 red points between the knees across the cut, low to the water, and fixed on us. The points did not blink. Before any of us spoke, they sank and were gone. A ring spread where they had been. Wade's jaw tightened. Simeon's fingers closed on the shotgun handle until the knuckles turned white dot. "Its eye shine," Wade said. "Gator eyes. They reflect like that." They were set too far apart for a small one, Pearl said. "And to level." Harlan looked past us into the brush. "It doesn't matter what they belong to. We keep moving." We pushed clear of the willows. The cut opened into a broad flat, where the water spread shallow over dark soil. Our route lay across the middle where the bottom held firm. A fallen cypress blocked the far edge, a trunk so thick the boat could not pass over it. It had been standing the last time we ran this way. Now it lay sideways with the roots torn up and pointed at the sky. The break looked fresh. Fibers in the wood were clean and pale with no stain. "Storm dropped it," Wade said. "There hasn't been a storm strong enough to do that for a week," Harlan said, "and the grains to clean. No wind twist." We pulled toward the trunk. A smear of dark film coated the bark where it had met the mud. The film gave off a sour metallic smell that cut through the swamp stink. I reached with the tip of my pole and touched it. The film stuck and pulled into a thread when I lifted the pole. It snapped and fell back in a thin ribbon. "Don't touch that again," Pearl said. She had pulled a handkerchief from her pocket and pressed it to her nose. Simeon reached out with 2 fingers and touched the wood above the film. "Cold," he said. "The air is warm, but this is cold." Harlan studied the gap between the trunk and a bank of reeds. "We can't get the boat through here," he said. "We carry it around through that break. 2 at the front, 2 at the back, 1 watching the crates. We do not set the cargo down. We do not stumble. We move once, then we're clear to the main channel. After that, it's straight water to the camp." We grounded the boat on the firmest patch we could find and stepped out. The mud sucked at our boots, but we kept our balance. Mosquitoes swarmed our faces and ears. I tried not to breathe through my mouth. Wade reached for the front handle and looked toward the reeds. Something moved beyond them. Not wind, but a slow push that bent the tops and released them. It stopped when we watched it. On my count, Harlan said, 1, 2, lift. We lifted, the bottom cleared the mud, and the weight pressed into our hands. Pearl steadied the middle bench with her palm and kept the crates from shifting. I moved backward toward the open lane Harlan had picked. The reeds brushed my shoulders. The smell from the fallen trunk reached us again. Stronger here. It made the back of my throat tighten. We kept our steps short and set the front on a patch of drier ground. Wade's boots sank to the ankle and he grunted. Harlan said nothing and pushed him up by the elbow. We adjusted our grip and carried again. The reeds opened to a narrow strip with packed earth where hogs had passed at some point. Fresh marks cut across that strip. 3 split toes evenly spaced in a row that led from the deeper water to the far side of the trunk. The edges of the prints held their shape with sharp ridges. The ground there held a small puddle that quivered. There was no wind. Move, Harlan said. No pausing. We reached the gap and lowered the boat into a channel no wider than a car. The bottom here felt firm underfoot. Pearl passed the front line to Wade and climbed in first to keep the cargo from sliding. Simeon stepped in next and set the shotgun on the floorboards without taking his eyes off the reeds. I took the back and pushed off with one foot. Harlan kept a hand on my shoulder until I had my balance. We used poles again to clear the trunk. The light fell on the bark where the cold film had smeared. The surface looked dry now, though no time had passed for that. I felt a movement under the boat that was not from any of us. It was a slow rise and fall, like something large pushing the water deeper down. The bottom bumped without force and settled again. Pearl glanced at me and nodded once. We did not speak. The lane bent left and rejoined the main channel. The frogs had not returned. The only sound was the thin buzz of insects and the soft slide of wood against mud. Harlan lowered the motor and tried the pull cord. It caught on the second tug. The noise felt loud but steady. We moved ahead. Wade kept the front light low and aimed it into the water rather than onto the banks. Red points showed again to the right, higher than before, inside the first row of trees beyond the knees. They held still and then closed with no eyelid movement. The beam drifted off them. When Wade brought it back, they were gone. Gators don't move like that. Simeon said, Enough. Harlan said, the buyer is waiting. We focus on the job. I am focused, Simeon said. I want to know what stands between us and the job. Wade shifted the light toward the path ahead. I want to know how close it is. We moved past the stand of black gum trees with low branches. Strips of bark hung torn in neat pieces, every strip the same width, as if gripped by a hand and pulled down. I set my eyes forward. My palms had picked up grit from the poles, and the slight scraping calmed me more than it should have. Pearl turned a page in the counting book and marked the time in the margin. She closed it and slid it under her leg. The main stretch opened at last into a wider body, with a sandbar on one side. The fish camp lay beyond 2 narrow points that formed a short inlet. We had used it since spring. Tonight, a light should have burned on the east side cabin window. No light showed. The shape of the cabin looked unchanged. Wade raised the lamp a little and swept the bar. A chain ran from a drift log to a stake near the waterline. The stake leaned at an angle. Dark stains marked the sand near it. Harlan slowed the motor to a crawl. We'll land behind the bar, he said. We'll check the camp. We do not unload unless the buyer is present. We eased over the bar. The boat touched bottom and slid with a low scrape. I stepped out first and pulled the front line. The sand gave but held my weight. I felt a vibration through the line that did not match the motor. It ran down it like a faint tremor from a distant step. I looked at the cabin again. The door stood open. The screen hung free. A chair lay on its side on the porch. Simeon climbed onto the bar with the shotgun under his arm. Wade followed and crouched to study the stains. Not oil, he said. He touched the sand near them and lifted his fingers. A thin layer of clear slime stuck and broke, same as the trunk. Smell that, Dot. We smelled it. The same sour metal scent, but thinner. The wind carried a different smell from the shallow water inside the inlet. A cold stone smell that did not belong to swamp or fish. Dot, stay near the boat. Harlan said, I will call once I have eyes on the cabin. Pearl said, no, we go as a line. We have seen enough to know that splitting up is not the way. Harlan looked at her and nodded. He took the lead with the motor rope coiled in his hand. I held the front line in case we needed to drag the boat back fast. We moved across the bar, toward the inlet. The sand gave way to packed mud with a pattern of round pits. I thought they were crab marks until Wade lifted the light higher. Each pit was part of a larger track. 3 deep toes, no heel. The stride matched what we had seen at the shelf, but angled toward the cabin, and then returned to the water. One set in, one set out. The inward set pressed deeper. We reached the porch. Harlan raised his hand. Hold. He stepped to the side of the door and leaned in just enough to see Dot. Empty, he said. No bodies, no movement. Dot. We went in. The front room smelled of kerosene and wet wool. A lamp had fallen and rolled under a table without breaking. The wick had burned out. The cot by the far wall lay bare except for a blanket bunched near the foot. The buyer's tin lockbox sat open on the chair by the window. Inside, the inner tray had been bent upward and twisted free. Cash wrappers lay torn on the floor. There were no bills anywhere. The corner of the table had gouges that matched the marks on the gum tree bark. Someone got here first, Wade said. Not wardens. They would tick the box. They would not twist it up and leave it. Pearl checked the back room. Cookware, on the hook, nothing boiling. A cup by the basin, a jacket on a nail. She touched the jacket sleeve and drew her hand back. Damp, but not from rain. From the air, she looked at the window frame. The nails are bent. The screen is pulled off. Something came through here. Harlan walked to the back door and looked at the yard. A rain barrel sat empty with the lid on the ground. The side of the barrel had 4 holes punched in a straight line. They were clean holes, not cracks. A single jar lay broken near the steps. The glass glittered. The smell of our product cut through the other odors for a moment, and then thinned to nothing. It had soaked into the ground and drained away. Simeon raised the shotgun to shoulder height and kept it aimed at the yard. Tracks, he said. We stepped onto the back step. The yard was a square of hard earth with a path to a dock that reached into the inlet. The dock post leaned. 2 boards had been pried up and set to the side. The tracks ran from the window to the barrel and then across the yard toward the dock. Each step had pulled small stones from the ground and left them sitting on the surface where the pressure had forced them up. At the dock, the tracks disappeared on the weathered planks and reappeared at the waterline, where Wetwood held a print for a breath before the water lifted it. We followed to the end of the dock. The inlet looked darker than the rest of the swamp. The front light did not reach the bottom here. Bubbles rose near the last post and broke in small rings that faded. The cold smell came stronger from this spot. My skin prickled from it. Back to the boat, Harlan said. We leave now. The buyer is gone. We will not wait for him. Wade hesitated. We will lose the sale. We will be alive, Pearl said. We turned toward the porch. A sound came from under it. Boards strained, nails creaked, and a wet breath pulled in and released, not through a mouth shaped like ours. It sounded deeper, as though the air moved through a larger passage. Simeon set his foot on the first step and froze. The step sagged and something shifted beneath. He stepped back. The space under the porch was open on the yard side. I had never looked under there on other runs. Tonight, the front light brushed across the gap. Red points showed again, not low to the water, but under our feet. They were still. The rest of the shape stayed in deep shadow. We stood still. The breathing continued. Harlan did not raise his voice. Slow steps. Back away. Do not run. Keep your weight centered. Do not look away from it. We backed 3 steps. The points moved, not by much. Then they rose a hand's width, as if the head had lifted. The porch creaked. The shape did not squeeze or struggle. It filled the space without effort. It had been there while we checked the rooms. It had listened to us. Now we go, Harlan said. We turned and walked across the yard with controlled steps. The air felt heavier. The cold smell faded the farther we got from the porch, which made me think it would not follow far from water. We passed the lockbox again. Wade stopped and reached for a loose bill on the floor. Pearl hissed at him. He left it. We reached the bar. The boat waited where we had left it. I slid the front line over the post and pulled the bottom until it floated. Simeon stepped in first and took his place with the shotgun. Pearl climbed in and covered the crates with 2 sacks. Wade and I pushed off together. Harlan stayed until last and stepped in without looking at the porch. He pulled the cord, the motor cord. We eased around the bar toward the open stretch. The dock behind us creaked once, then the sound stopped. The red points did not show again. We set course for the channel that would carry us on a straight line to the river mouth. Harlan kept the motor steady. No one spoke for a long minute. I had a thought that would not leave. The tracks showed an approach and a departure. The barrel holes had clean edges. The lockbox tray had been bent beyond human strength. The thing under the porch had waited without rushing us. It could have taken us then. It had not. It is not only hungry, I said. It is curious. Curiosity doesn't matter, Harlan said. Distance matters. Speed matters. We cannot outrun what lives here, Simeon said. We can only outlast it. Pearl looked back once and then set her eyes on the path ahead. Then, hold steady, she said, and do not give it reason to change its mind. We entered the long stretch that led back toward Scape Swamp's outer run. The channel widened enough that the cypress knees gave us more room on each side. Harlan opened the throttle a little. The motor noise pushed back the swamp quiet, and for a moment, I welcomed the sound. The night air pressed against my face and carried a hint of open water ahead. I checked the crates. The jars sat tight and quiet under the sacks. Pearl kept one hand on them, despite the smooth ride. We do not stop again, Harlan said, not for anything. Wade nodded, but kept the front light sweeping slow arcs on the right bank. Each sweep showed mud banks, half-sunken logs, and still water between the knees. Nothing else. The frogs still had not returned. That bothered me more than the red eyes. The swamp was never silent. Silence here meant something else had taken the space where life should be. Simeon leaned close to me. It watched us under that porch while we walked over its head. That does not sit right. Nothing about this sits right, I said. But we're moving away. You saw the prints, he said. It walks faster than our pace in the shallows. If it wants to keep up, it will. I wanted to say it would stay near the camp, but my own memory of those red points moving from channel to trees told me not to offer comfort I did not believe. I kept my grip on the side rail tight enough to feel the wood edge in my palm. We passed the willow stand again. The branches brushed the side of the bottom with a scratch that sounded too loud. Wade pointed the light through the curtain. Loose threads of moss hung stripped, scattered as though something had brushed through with force and torn them free. On the mud just beyond the willows, 3 fresh prints dug deep. The water inside them looked clean. No film, no slime, new dot. It did not stay at the camp, Pearl said. Harlan didn't slow. Eyes ahead. We stay centered in the deep run. If something moves in the shallows, we outrun it. Wade raised the light a little higher. The beam caught insects in a brief glow before they disappeared into the dark again. I listened for movement behind us and heard only the motor and the bottom. Cutting through the water, we reached the bend near the old pump house. The egret was gone. The door now lay flat in the water, one corner touching a knee. The hinge clanked once as the front wake reached it. Harlan flicked his eyes that direction and then looked to the fork ahead. Left, he said. We cut a mile off that way. Pearl shifted. Left runs close to the ridge, narrow and tight. Harlan nodded, which means we are harder to follow. We took the left fork. The water here narrowed again and reeds grew taller, bending inward until they brushed our shoulders. They made a dry whisper against the boat that sounded like hissing. Wade angled the front light straight ahead. The beam struck a branch hanging low with long grooves carved in its bark. The grooves crossed each other, not straight like the ones we saw before. They twisted. That was not there earlier, Wade said. Maybe we missed it, I said, though I knew we had not. Simeon set the shotgun in the crook of his arm, barrel pointed upward. His grip looked calm, but his breathing had changed. Shorter, controlled. We continued. The motor churned mud in places, leaving a cloudy trail. The smell of the cold slime returned in patches. The air thickened ahead. The path bent right around a cluster of cypress, where roots rose into a tight maze. Harlan slowed us to avoid scraping the bottom. The reeds on both sides rustled in a long roll that passed from the back to the front. Something pacing us, or wind. There was no wind. Pearl's voice stayed even. How far until open water? A minute, Harlan said. Maybe less. The channel widened. I let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The trees fell back, and the sky opened enough to show a slice of pale moon above the tops. The main river lay ahead, dark but broad. The current would carry us fast once we hit it. We could be out of the swamp before midnight. Wade leaned forward, ready to sweep the next corner. He froze mid-motion, his shoulders tense. The front light beam had landed on something on the right bank. A post of cracked wood rose from the mud. At first, I thought it was a weathered fence post. Then I saw it was the pump house door, standing upright, stuck against 2 knees. Deep claw marks scored the length of it. Fresh enough, the splinters stood white dot. It pulled the door from the water, Wade said. Dragged it here. It knows the waterways. Pearl said. It moves through them like home. Harlan opened the throttle to push us into the main run. The boat surged, the reeds thinned, and our wake began to spread wide behind us. The frogs still refused to speak. Crickets only hummed. We reached the middle of the river. The current caught us and pushed us along. It felt safer in motion. Water behind us, distance growing. My mind loosened a little. Maybe we would return to the landing, unload, and call the run ruined. We would leave the crates at Harlan's and come back when the buyer showed up again. Simeon would talk tough about the invisible shape under the porch. Wade would deny he had ever been rattled. Pearl would write a detailed note of every turn and odd mark in her book so we could avoid that side of the swamp next time. Harlan would sit and drink in silence. The story would become something we only spoke about when the night grew too quiet. The motor sputtered. All of us looked back. Harlan tapped the gas line and tried the throttle. It caught, then sputtered again. The front dipped a little as the speed dropped. The current pulled us sideways toward a shallow where snags lay hidden under the surface. Not now, Wade said. It's the fuel, Harlan said. Switch the valve to the reserve can. I reached for the line, turned the switch. The motor roared once, then cut completely. The sudden silence pressed in hard. Momentum carried us forward. The bottom scraped something beneath, then cleared it. But we had lost control. We drifted toward the right bank, where the knees grew thick again. Poles, Harlan said. Keep us off the roots. We grabbed the poles. I shoved mine hard against a knee and slowed our drift. The current stayed strong enough to force us near the bank. The trees here leaned close, their roots twisted into the water. The cold smell returned, sharp and stale. Wade aimed the light across the bank. Red points gleamed between the knees, closer than before. The beam locked on them. They did not blink or turn away. They stayed level with each other in a row. The shadow behind them filled into a tall shape, shoulders higher than a grown man, thick arms down its sides, green scales that caught the light and reflected a dull shine, three-fingered hands with wide pads. The chest pushed forward with steady breaths. Water dripped from its legs into the channel. Simeon raised the shotgun. Harlan grabbed his arm. No shooting unless it comes. We do not make angry what we cannot stop. The creature moved one step, placing its foot on the edge of a knee. The wood creaked under its weight, but held. Its head tilted slightly. The red of its eyes glowed stronger. The pupils were narrow, but not like a snake's, more like they shifted with the light to focus dot. Pearl did not look away. It followed us from the camp. It wants to know where we go. The creature's throat moved. A low sound broke out, deep and uneven. It reminded me of air forced through a wet pipe. It carried a note that did not match any animal call I knew. It was not a warning growl. It was not hunger. It sounded like a question. The current spun our back a little toward deeper water. The creature watched the movement. It crouched, ready to leap or follow. Harlan eased the handle, trying to guide us with nothing but the rudder's drag. Do not slip, he said, low. The boat caught a current line and pulled away from the bank, bit by bit. The creature's head lowered. I gripped the pole harder. Pearl's hand went to the sacks covering the crates, steadying them again, as though keeping order would keep us calm. The creature stepped onto another knee, but did not chase. The red points stayed fixed until we reached the midpoint of the river again. Then it sank behind the roots and disappeared as if the swamp had swallowed it. We pulled harder until the current centered us. The motor stayed dead. Harlan reached for the pull cord. He paused. Take one breath, he said. Do not think of it. Think of the engine. He pulled. It sputtered once, twice, then silence. He pulled again. The motor caught. Not a sputter, but a steady hum. No one cheered. Wade kept the light on the bank until the trees pulled away behind us. Simeon stayed braced. Pearl let out a breath that shook once before she steadied it. Harlan brought us back to cruise speed. The landing was still a ways off, but straight water lay ahead. Houses would sit beyond that. Dogs, lanterns, human voices, places where cold smells and red eyes did not belong. We thought we were clear, but the swamp was not done with us yet. We followed the main river south, staying close to the middle, where the current ran strongest. Harlan checked the fuel line twice, keeping pressure with his thumb on the clamp, as if his grip alone kept the motor alive. The front cut a narrow path through the dark water, and each swell of the wake rippled into the banks until it disappeared under roots and mud. Nobody looked back. It felt like turning around would invite something to rise behind us. We keep straight until the fire tower, Harlan said. Then the landing comes fast on the right. We tie up, unload nothing, and lock the gate behind us. Wade nodded, eyes forward. What about the crates? We keep them until the buyer sends word, Pearl said, but we do not stay outside tonight. Her calm tone gave her words more weight than panic would have. The air lightened a little as the channel widened further. More moonlight reached the surface. The frogs finally called again, just a thin chorus at first, but real. I almost let myself believe the silence was behind us. Then the call cut off. Not all at once, one voice at a time, each falling quiet until the air flattened again. Simeon wet his lips. It's still near. We do not know that, Harlan said. We know enough, Simeon answered. We rounded a slow bend. The river straightened. The fire tower should have been visible ahead. A tall shape with a square cabin at the top, usually marked by a single red warning light. Tonight, no light burned. Wade raised the front lamp and swept the tree line. The tower stood there, but the top cabin leaned slightly, like one of the support beams had shifted. That light was working on our way in, Simeon said. The current floods near there sometimes, Harlan said. His voice lacked its earlier certainty. Maybe the bank gave way. Pearl rested her hand on her counting book. We saw claw marks on trees tall as that porch. It is not hard to imagine the tower being tested too. Wade moved the beam upward. The entire right side of the structure had deep gap. One support leg bent inward, metal warped. The base of the tower lay covered with broken planks and railing pieces. Something had climbed it or tried to pull it down. Harlan increased speed, wanting distance. The boat jumped forward. We came near another curve. On the left bank, a shape blocked part of the moonlight. A car, old sedan, hood torn open like a split tin. Windshield cracked from the inside. Driver's door missing. The metal showed dents. 3 wide circles pressed in at an even angle. That clerk wasn't lying, Wade whispered. This is what he meant. Harlan's jaw flexed, eyes ahead. We stayed on center line. The sight passed, swallowed by trees. The river narrowed again near a stand of pines. Their lower trunks were clean of branches, straight like walls on either side. The moon reflected off something nailed to one of them, a cast iron sign from a fuel company. The sign hung crooked. Its surface was twisted and dented. The company logo stretched into an unrecognizable shape. One corner still held firm to the nail. The rest drooped. Simeon shifted the shotgun from one side to the other. Signs, cars, cabins. It tests everything. It is learning where people go. The thought made my stomach drop. Not just hunting. Understanding. The motor hummed steady. We passed between the pines. A long clearing opened on the right. Water running shallow over smooth stone. I recognized the place. An old logging slide, long abandoned. A path led from there into a stretch of woods that eventually touched the highway. We had choices from here, but we stayed with the river. Something splashed ahead. Not small like a fish, but heavy, like a full body dropping into deep water. Harlan slowed, but didn't stop. The front light swept the area. The water smooth. No bubbles, no ripple trail. Keep going, Pearl said quietly. We did. When the first sight of the landing lights flickered through branches, a wave of relief washed over me so sudden I nearly sagged forward. 3 lanterns strung along the dock posts. The shed roof glinted faintly. Safety. We were close. Harlan exhaled. Good. We'll leave the boat tied. We take the crate count inside. All the lanterns went dark at once, not fading out. Snuffed. Every one. No movement around them. No wind. The light simply died. The only light left was Wade's front spotlight and the thin moon above. Simeon's knuckles whitened around the shotgun. It's waiting for us. We are not far, Harlan said. We make a straight line for the ramp. We have ground under us and we can reach the truck. We risk being stuck in shallow water, Wade argued. Better to land further down and walk the bank. No, Pearl said. Away from the landing, the ground turns to sinkhole, mud 4 feet deep. We would not see it until we stepped in, so forward then. The landing sat in still water. No current there, no sound. Wade swallowed hard. Say something, he whispered. Pearl stared straight ahead. The swamp does not want us talking. The motor carried us closer. The ramp became clear. Stone steps wet near the top from humidity. Harlan angled the back to pull us side on for a clean exit. The front bumped the dock. A thud sounded from beneath. The whole bottom jumped. We froze. Another thud. Harder. Water around us swelled in a single large rise, as if pushed from below. Go, Harlan hissed. I grabbed the front line and leaped to the dock. My boots slipped once on the wet wood, but I caught myself. I braced and pulled the boat close. Pearl shoved the counting book in her jacket and handed me the first crate. It was heavier now, wet maybe, or trembling in my grip from nerves. Simeon climbed out next, shotgun sweeping left and right. Wade shut off the light to save the battery and stepped out behind him, pistol drawn. Pearl followed, careful, calm. Harlan was last, tying a quick knot. The swamp behind us stayed silent. No eyes, no movement, no breath. We hurried toward the ramp. The top of it led to a short gravel path and the locked gate where Harlan's truck sat beyond, 30 feet away. We moved fast but stayed together. The gravel under our boots crunched. Normal sound, welcome sound. Then something shattered wood behind us, not like a branch snapping, like the dock itself had been hit. Pearl turned halfway. Do not. A wet dragging noise followed, boards flexing under huge weight. Simeon raised the shotgun and clicked off the safety. Keep going, Harlan said. Do not turn round. We faced forward again. 20 feet, the gate right there. The dragging came closer slowly, not rushed, confident. Stone underfoot. 10 feet, sudden breath behind us. Thick, cold, too close. Harlan dropped his crate and spun with the flare gun he always kept on his belt. He fired. The flare arced bright red over the dock, and in its burst of light, we saw it, standing fully out of the water, tall as the cabin ceiling we'd passed earlier, green scales wet against its thick frame, three-fingered hands wrapped around a snapped dock post, chest rising and falling in slow, deep pulls, and those eyes locked on us, wide apart, bright red, fixed with full intent. The flare burned down, darkness again. Pearl grabbed my arm. Move. We ran. The truck waited behind the fence. The padlock hung open. Harlan must have left it loose earlier to make escape quick. He shoved the gate open and we scrambled through. Simeon swung around to face the ramp. Shotgun up. The dragging stopped. Silence. Simeon held steady. Nothing. But that silence felt like a held breath. Not empty. Waiting in the dark. The flare's last ember fell silent in the water, and we realized the night was not over. Simeon stood just inside the gate, shotgun aimed down the ramp. The barrel stayed level without shaking, but his breathing grew sharper. Wade killed the truck's alarm with a key that beeped too loud for comfort. Harlan hauled himself behind the wheel and turned the key. The engine cranked slow, like it hated waking up. He tried again. The starter whined. Nothing. Come on, Harlan said under his breath. I unloaded the first crate into the truck bed and returned for the second. Pearl helped me with steady hands. She checked behind us once, then forced her eyes forward again, as though looking too long would draw whatever stood beyond the ramp closer. Simeon stepped backward through the gate, still covering the dock. I don't see it, he said. That is not good. It was 30 feet tall 2 seconds ago, Wade said. It didn't disappear. It did not chase after the flare, Pearl said. It studies us first. It waits to see what we do. That thing doesn't need to think, Wade argued. It just needs to reach. Both can be true, Pearl said. Harlan turned the key a third time. The engine coughed awake. Headlights flicked on and lit trees across the access road. For a moment, hope returned. Then, behind us, wood groaned again. Heavy footsteps crushed the ramp planks one step at a time. Slow, careful, like it wanted us to hear every inch it claimed. Get in, Harlan said. No one argued. Wade climbed into the passenger seat. I lifted the crates into the bed. Pearl slammed the tailgate. Simeon stepped back last, shotgun still on the doorway of dark that led to the ramp. Harlan threw the truck into reverse. A hand appeared at the bottom of the ramp. 3 thick fingers gripped the edge of the concrete. The rest of it followed. One shoulder, then another. The creature hauled itself up on land, water streaming off its scales in long drips. It stood tall on the flat. No need to hunch under a deck now. The red eyes fixed on us again. Harlan floored it. The truck tires spun on gravel, throwing small stones against the gate. The truck lurched backward, then shot forward, past us up the access road. Branches scraped the sides like claws. Headlights bounced. Wade clutched the dashboard. I twisted in my seat to look back. The landing fell away behind the tree line. The creature did not roar or chase in a sprint, but its shape moved into the road's entrance, not rushing, closing distance by existing. Every stride was long, smooth, silent, but for the weight that bent small saplings as it passed. Drive faster, Simeon said. No shout in his voice, just urgency. "I am," Harlan said. The tires hit pavement. The engine found smooth traction. We sped up. The trees gave way to open field. The smell of grass replaced the swamp's damp rot. For a breath, the world looked normal again. A thud hit the truck bed. Pearl whipped around, checked the crates. I leaned over the seat and saw one sack knocked loose. A jar rolled and shattered at the corner of the bed. The clear liquid spread across the metal. Another hit rocked the truck. Something heavy had grabbed the tailgate from outside. "Hold on," Harlan yelled. He swerved left. The force behind us didn't let go. The truck fishtailed, but Harlan steadied it. I crawled into the bed, glass crunching under my knee. The crate slid. I caught one before it toppled. 2 fingers, large, scaled, curled over the top edge of the tailgate. I froze. The pads on the fingers left wet prints. More slime, cold-smelling. The tailgate hinges wind as something pulled against them. Simeon rolled down the back window and leaned out halfway, shotgun braced. "Move," he said. I dropped flat. The blast cracked the night. Pellets hit something solid. The fingers jerked back, but didn't release. A wet rumble came from behind us. Not pain, not fear, annoyance. Again, Wade shouted. Simeon fired a second time directly at the grip. The hand released. The truck lurched forward with sudden freedom, and I grabbed the crate edge to stay upright. Harlan didn't slow. The road curved left and opened into a bridge crossing a narrow channel of the swamp. Concrete guardrails lined both sides. If anything blocked us here, there was nowhere else to go. The creature appeared again in the headlights, standing in the center of the bridge. We could not stop. Harlan leaned into the wheel. Brace. The hit came hard. We struck at an angle. The creature didn't move like a body would. It absorbed the hit and rolled over the hood. The windshield split. A crack ran across the driver's side. A heavy shape thudded on the roof, sliding toward the back. The truck tilted under the weight. I felt claws drag across the metal above my head. Sparks flashed from the roof's corner where something scraped it. Simeon stood in the bed to fire again. He didn't get the chance. One green arm swept across and knocked him sideways. He flew off the truck into grass beyond the guardrail. The shotgun clattered on pavement. Simeon, Pearl shouted. "We can't stop," Harlan yelled, but Simeon lay still. If we left him, he was gone. If we stayed, we might all be gone. The creature shifted, preparing to drop into the bed again. Wade reached through the back window and grabbed the flare gun Harlan had set on the seat. He fired straight up. The flare burst right above the roof. The sudden light shocked the creature. It flinched and lost its grip. Gravity dragged it off the back. It hit the road behind us with a crash that split pavement. The flare's glow dimmed but stayed long enough for us to see it rise again. Still unhurt, still coming. Harlan slowed only enough to turn the truck into a side ditch. We skidded through grass, bounced over a drain pipe, then ground to a stop near a break in the fence line. "We go on foot," Harlan said, lungs burning. "We get Simeon, then we get to the highway. There will be people, lights. We survive by staying together." Wade took the pistol, and a handful of shells scattered from Simeon's vest. Pearl carried the counting book as if it were a compass. I grabbed the shotgun from the road and checked it. 1 shell left. We ran back toward where Simeon had fallen. He was sitting up, dazed but awake. "Can you move?" I asked. He nodded once, teeth clenched. "Ribs, but I'll run." We pulled him up. The night behind us shook with the sound of something large brushing against trees, straightening where we had bent them. It wasn't sprinting. It wasn't struggling. It was following with patience. Lights ahead, Pearl said. Houses. We jogged unevenly toward them, every shadow twitching at the edge of sight. I counted steps without meaning to. My throat tasted metallic. My legs felt hollow but kept going. The gravel shifted to paved driveway. Porch lights glowed warm across yards. A dog barked from a chain. Normal, human life. We turned into the nearest yard. Wade banged the door. "Help," he yelled. "Call the sheriff. Now." The porch light flickered, then went out. Every house light on the road dimmed, then died as if a curtain fell over the street. Simeon clutched his ribs. "It's here." Wade stepped back from the door. How did it? Glass shattered across the street. A metal trash bin flew into the road, dented from the inside. We heard water dripping, not rain, not a hose, dripping from scales. Somewhere close, Harlan pointed to the far end of the street. "The church backup generator. We make it there." We ran again, past dark houses, down the center of the road. My breath rasped loud in my ears, every muscle dragged, but fear pushed harder. Halfway there, Simeon stumbled. I caught his arm and pulled him up. Wade looked back once and froze mid. Red eyes stood in the intersection behind us, not moving, watching, measuring our distance. Its chest rose and fell, steady as a tide. We turned the next corner and saw the church. Small brick walls, white steeple, a single light flickered above the entrance, weak but still alive. We sprinted. The church door was unlocked. Pearl pulled it open, and we poured inside. Harlan slammed it shut and threw the deadbolt. Wade stacked 2 pews against it. Simeon sagged into a seat, breathing shallow. The generator buzzed somewhere in back, powering dim hallway lights. The air inside smelled of old hymnals and dust. Silence outside. We waited. No footsteps, no crate-smashing strength against the walls. Just waiting. Pearl stood near the front window, peering through the blinds. It knows we're in here, she whispered, but it does not test walls like it tested wood. Maybe it knows these are stronger. Then we stay until dawn, Wade said. Sheriff will drive by. Someone will, unless the roads are blocked, Simeon said. It moves trees like kindling. Harlan rested his forehead against the pew. We need a plan. I listened, not to our breathing, but to the swamp. It wasn't a place anymore. It had come with us. The silence outside held weight like a mind thinking. We can't hide forever, I said. It came out of the swamp for us. It'll stay until it decides what we are. What do we do then? Wade asked. I checked the last shell in the shotgun. We finish what we started. We end this. Simeon shook his head. You saw it shrug off 2 shots. That won't stop it. No, I said, but it reacts to light. Fire made it drop. Maybe it hates heat. Pearl lifted her chin. The church has lantern oil, candles, a supply closet with cleaning fuel. Harlan stood. Determination replaced exhaustion in his eyes. We make a wall of fire between us and the swamp. Force it back, and if it comes through anyway, Wade asked, then we keep it here. Pearl answered, where others can see proof, where it does not choose its ground. Outside, gravel shifted under huge weight. The church wall creaked. Red eyes glowed through the window. Close. We readied ourselves. 1 breath. 2. It pushed the door. The pews slid an inch. No more running. It had chased us out of its home. Now we would defend our own. The door flexed again. Harder this time. The stacked pews jumped and scraped across the old wooden floor. Dust drifted from the rafters. The deadbolt groaned as if the screws were pulling loose. Harlan held the flare gun with both hands, ready to fire the last round if needed. Pearl, show me the supply closet, he said. She pointed down the side hall. I followed them, leaving Wade and Simeon braced at the entrance. The hallway smelled like bleach and candle wax. A row of Sunday school drawings fluttered on a corkboard from the shaking of each push at the door. We found the closet. Inside were bottles of lantern oil, 3 jugs of solvent cleaner, stacks of candles, and a crate of paper hymnal. Harlan grabbed 2 jugs and a lantern tin. I grabbed candles and the crate. Pearl carried 2 more jugs, her knuckles white from the strain. Another shove hit the door. Wade grunted as he held his shoulder into the pew. It knows we're slow, he called out. It's waiting for us to be tired. We're not giving it time. Harlan answered. We lined the pews with hymnals and paper, soaked them with lantern oil. The fumes burned my throat. Pearl set candles along the windowsills, striking matches with calm, practiced hands. The flames flickered, small but defiant. Simeon took the shotgun again, holding the barrel low. 1 shell, he said. Make it count. It's not for the creature, I said. It's for the fuel line. We blast the oil when it steps through. Wade nodded. Trap it inside the fire. Pearl looked toward the stained glass front panels. Fire will spread fast in here. It will, Harlan said. But if we don't stop it, it will keep following us and anyone it wants afterward. Another impact. The pew legs scraped across the floor, almost a foot. The deadbolt bent. Screws popped. A thin line of moonlight cut through where the door frame split. It's now, Harlan said. We moved back, giving it room to enter. Pearl stood near the pulpit, eyes steady. Wade held the pistol low, not shaking. Simeon and I flanked the aisle. Harlan waited behind us with the flare aimed at the soaked fuel. The door smashed inward. The pews toppled once. Then the creature pushed them aside as if they were driftwood. It stepped over splintered wood, shoulders brushing the frame. Its scales glistened. Water dripped from its elbows onto the church floor. It tilted its head, almost curious at the scene. fire flickering in quiet lines, barrels standing near the pulpit. It looked at each of us, not wild hunger, focused attention. We were not prey. It was judging us, understanding us, testing one last weakness. "You don't belong here," Pearl said. Her voice didn't shake. The creature breathed once, long and low, its chest expanded, muscles tightening, a sign it was ready to strike. "Now," I said. Simeon raised the shotgun. The creature shifted to charge. He fired at the soaked hymnals. The blast lit them instantly. Flame raced across the pews in a fast line, climbing up the paper and sweeping toward the doorway. The creature pulled back from the heat, stumbling one step back. Wade fired the pistol into the nearest jug. Liquid sprayed into the flame, exploding outward. Heat punched up the walls. The creature hissed, a harsh, angry release of air. It shielded its eyes with its forearm. Its scales did not burn like skin, wood, but they pulled back from the fire, dry edges shrinking under the heat. Harlan fired the flare into the center of the blaze. A bright burst filled the room. Curtains near the windows caught fire. The flames surged toward the ceiling, painting the walls orange. Heat struck my face and forced me to blink tears. The creature backed toward the entrance, not beaten, but unwilling to pass through the fire. It turned and shoved through the doorway, boards cracking around it. It stepped into the yard, chest rising fast now, breath visible in the shifting shadows. We moved with it, not letting it disappear. The fire behind us roared louder, forcing us outside. Sparks followed like angry insects. Outside, moonlight washed the road silver. The creature stood near the gravel crossing, framed by dancing embers. It turned its head toward the swamp beyond the houses, toward where it had come from, toward the life it knew. Harlan stepped forward 2 steps. "Go and do not follow us again." The creature looked back at us. It blinked once, slow, a measure taken, a conclusion reached. It turned without a single wasted movement and walked into the dark. Water dripped from its hands into the gravel, each drop hissing as it cooled on the hot stones. It crossed between 2 houses, shoulders brushing siding, shrubs bent aside. A chained dog barked once, then whimpered quiet. The swamp swallowed it. We stood still, watching until even the smallest leaf stopped rustling. Then we turned toward the church. The roof crackled, smoke boiling out through the steeple vents. Flames licked through the windows in curling sheets. The porch rail collapsed with a wooden moan. The fire ate everything we had used to trap it. "We called the fire department," Wade said. Harlan nodded, and the sheriff. Pearl nodded too, though she looked tired past the bone. "We tell what we saw." Simeon wiped sweat from his brow, then touched the tender side of his ribs. "They'll think we're full of it, maybe," I said, "but something will remain." I pointed at the wet prints drying on the gravel. 3 wide toes, deep, unmistakable. "Someone else will see those before the night is over." Harlan stared at the burning church. "We cost ourselves the buyer. We cost this town a piece of its peace. But that thing knows now. Fire can stop it. People can push it back." Pearl closed her counting book. "Maybe it never wanted us dead. It watched us plenty. But when we stepped into its home, it chose to test us. We showed it that this is ours." We gathered around the truck, silent. The fire engines would come soon. Their sirens would carry far into the swamp. Maybe far enough. Wade kept his eyes fixed on the dark line of trees. "You think it's gone for good?" I listened to the night, waiting for silence, for breath, for scales against mud. I heard frogs start up again in the distance. Crickets joined them. The normal songs returned, hesitant at first, then steady. "It's still out there," I said. "It knows we live here too, and we know it's real." Simeon checked the last shell in his vest pocket. "Then we stay ready." Harlan looked at the road, a long stretch leading back to Bishopville. "We never speak of this like a tale for tourists. We speak of it only when needed." Pearl lifted her chin. "Folklore grows from fear. Truth keeps fear honest." The church roof caved inward behind us, sparks rising into the night sky. We didn't run from the swamp anymore. We walked toward the town lights with fire on our backs, and the knowledge of what watches from the water. If the lizard man ever comes again, it will not find us ignorant. It will not find us unprepared. It will remember this night, and so will we.